A man who dares to waste 1 hour of time has not discovered the value of life. Charles Darwin. A man's friendships are one of the best measures of his worth. Ignorance more frequently begets confidence than does knowledge. It is those who know little, and not those who know much, who so positively assert that this or that problem will never be solved by science. Charles Darwin. I have steadily endeavored to keep my mind free so as to give up any hypothesis, however much beloved, and I cannot resist forming one on every subject, as soon as facts are shown to be opposed to it. If the misery of the poor be caused not by the laws of nature, but by our institutions, great is our sin. Charles Darwin. An American monkey, after getting drunk on brandy, would never touch it again, and thus is much wiser than most men. A scientific man ought to have no wishes, no affections, a mere heart of stone. I cannot persuade myself that a beneficent and omnipotent God would have designedly created parasitic wasps with the express intention of their feeding within the living bodies of caterpillars. I have tried lately to read Shakespeare, and found it so intolerably dull that it nauseated me. The very essence of instinct is that it's followed independently of reason. I love fools' experiments. I am always making them. The highest possible stage in moral culture is when we recognize that we ought to control our thoughts. A moral being is one who is capable of reflecting on his past actions and their motives, of approving of some and disapproving of others at some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries. The civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace the savage races throughout the world. We must, however, acknowledge, as it seems to me, that man with all his noble qualities still bears in his bodily frame the indelible stamp of his lowly origin. The mystery of the beginning of all things is insoluble by us, and I for one must be content to remain an agnostic. Animals, whom we have made our slaves, we do not like to consider our equal. How paramount the future is to the present, when one is surrounded by children. I am turned into a sort of machine for observing facts and grinding out conclusions. To kill an error is as good a service as, and sometimes even better than, the establishing of a new truth or fact. I have called this principle, by which each slight variation, if useful, is preserved, by the term of natural selection. Man is descended from a hairy-tailed quadruped, probably arboreal in its habits. False facts are highly injurious to the progress of science, for they often endure long. But false views, if supported by some evidence, do little harm, for everyone takes a salutary pleasure in proving their falseness. Charles Darwin. We can allow satellites, planets, suns, universe, nay whole systems of universes, to be governed by laws, but the smallest insect we wish to be created at once by special act. Charles Darwin. What a book a devil's chaplain might write on the clumsy, wasteful, blundering, low, and horribly cruel work of nature. Charles Darwin. On the ordinary view of each species having been independently created, we gain no scientific explanation. It is a cursed evil to any man to become as absorbed in any subject as I am in mine. My mind seems to have become a kind of machine for grinding general laws out of large collections of facts. Man tends to increase at a greater rate than his means of subsistence. Charles Darwin is often cited as the greatest biologist in history. His most famous work, On the Origin of Species, explains the theory of evolution by natural selection, providing numerous supporting examples. Darwin believed that all of life on Earth had descended from a common ancestor, whose offspring could vary slightly from the previous generation. Successive generations of life took part in a struggle for existence, in which the best adapted variations survived to seed. New generations, less well-adapted variations, became extinct. Darwin was born on February 12, 1809. In the tiny merchant town of Shrewsbury, England, a child of wealth and privilege who loved to explore nature. Darwin was the second youngest of 6 kids. Darwin came from a long line of scientists. His father, Dr. R. W. Darwin, was a medical doctor, and his grandfather, Dr. Erasmus Darwin, was a renowned botanist. Darwin's mother, Susanna, died when he was only 8 years old, following a lifetime of devout research. Charles Darwin died at his family home, Down House, in London, on April 19, 1882. Charles Darwin